All right, good morning, everybody. Can you hear me? Yep.
We can
Okay,
hear you.
cool. Awesome, thank you. All righty, well, we'll just jump right in here. I can get this started here. All righty, so today we're going to be demoing the new official release of the watershed tools for ArcGIS Pro. I'm running this on 3.6, which there is a difference between lower levels of ArcGIS Pro and 3.6 and above. It has a lot to do with how the code is written in the background. But we have tools for both below 3.6 and above. This will be demoing the version that is 3.6 and above. So if you open up a regular map that you've already made and you try and navigate to the tools through like your catalog or you add it through your toolboxes, and it looks like the tool on the left. That is the old tool. That is not the correct tool. You can tell because it starts with defined area of interest. So that should be your little take note. Okay, wait, this is the old tool. The tool you see on the right-hand side of the screen here is what the new tool looks like. It starts with a project setup, which is very different from the old tool. But I will walk you guys through how that works. So in this little snippet that I have here, I am going to be showing you what it looks like if you try and use the tool outside the template that comes in the tool package. So this would be if you opened your existing map and you're trying to navigate there and you just jump right in and try to use it. So get it to play here. Maybe. Take some practice here. Okay, so you would go on, you would open your first part of the tool, and here it's asking you to pick where you want to save things. Then we're giving it a name, our workspace a name. And the next part is we're also picking a coordinate system, which I'll go into a little bit later. You'll see when I open up the template why we're picking UTM. And you get this error message. And in the error message, it's telling you that you have to use the tool or the map that is inside the tool that's embedded in there. So let's replaying this. Okay. So this is how you would find the template that needs to be used in order to use the tool. So you would just go over to your projects and open up, like you're going to open a new project. You go to open another project. You go to wherever you have your tool saved, and I have mine here. And in this directory, you see that there's a folder called state templates. And within that, then you would open up that Ohio template. I didn't save this one, so. And then it's gonna load. And then, sorry. Very important step is do not forget to save as. This is kind of a really easy thing to do. Luckily, within that folder, they do have a quote unquote clean version and a separate, they're identical. It's just to help if you accidentally overrode one of the templates, but it's good practice to save as. So when you open it up, this is what the template looks like. It's kind of really cool. They've got all these layers already in here for you so that you don't have to go and hunt them down or try and download them from somewhere if you didn't have them. The very important thing to take note here is which UTM zone your project is in. For today, we're in UTM zone 17 North. But again, not all of us in Ohio are in there. So just make sure you take note. And unfortunately, for some counties, you're on the border and you might have some projects in one and one in another. So just take note of that. And then here's just a little tour of what the template looks like when you first jump in. So it's dynamic. So as you zoom in, certain layers turn on and off. So as we zoomed in, those UTM layers turned off, but they have municipalities, they've got townships. If you zoom in farther, they've even got an embedded soils layer. It is not like the soils layers for each one of the counties. When I open the drop down here, you'll see it doesn't have the name of each soil type, but it has the hydraulic unit, which is kind of nice. So you wouldn't have to go hunt down that soils layer. We can actually use that later on in the tool here. So, alrighty. The next step is to add your DEMs that you download. A lot of times we get these from OGRIP. Honestly, that's the only place I've ever downloaded. You can also bring in your soils layer for your county if you have access to it. I'm old school, old habits die hard. I did bring this in, so although it is not necessary. So, alrighty. And then the next step is we're going to start using the tool. I do have this pre-recorded in case something goes disastrously wrong, but I do want to run it live just because it just works a little better for me. So give me 1 second while I switch. Alrighty, and this should look pretty familiar. I think I got a message. Hold on 1 second. I will see what. So I have a version of the toolbox that I can send out to people. I just got the question, where do we obtain the files? People who are on NRCS machines, it is somewhere on your machine. I don't have access, so I can't tell you exactly where. I assume it's probably in a similar place where they have their soil layers that have the hydraulic units in it. So, alrighty. So here we are in my tool, in our template that I have saved as. So it's separate from the default here. I've added my layers, and the nice thing about having this template is that the toolbox is already embedded in here. I don't have to add it like we did before or go through our folders and try and find where we've saved it. It's just hanging out in here for us. So we'll go ahead and get started with our first step. So we need to create our workspace. So in here, we're going to pick a place we want to save our work. So we'll go in here, and then I always put everything on the C drive. For these, it just works better. So I'm going to pick my watersheds here and say okay. And I'm going to give it a name, and I'm going to call it, we'll call it TDP watershed. I'm going to call it 2 because I did some practice. That was already watershed 1. And then back to the map template, when I first opened it, those layers that said UTM 17 or UTM 16. In this case, we're in UTM 17. So I would go in here, select my coordinate system. I have it saved under favorites here. If you don't already have this saved under favorites, you can search up here in this bar, And once you find the one you want, you click on it, and then you would just hit the star. Obviously, this says remove, but it's the same for later down in the directory to add. So we've got this one selected, so we'll say OK, and we will run this. This one's pretty quick.
Nice.
And what was that? Does somebody have a question? Okay. So in the previous tool, a lot of these steps were all under the create area of interest step. In the new tool, it's the same things are happening, they're just broke out into multiple steps. So then we're just going to go on to our next one, which is create area of interest. And here's where we are going to go select where we had that. So TDP watersheds too. And say OK. And then here is where we're going to draw our area of interest. If you had a shape already, you could select it. In most cases, you're going to be clicking this. The nice part about the new template is that the other options are grayed out. You have one option. So if you were a little confused about what you needed to do, kind of narrows it down for you. And double click to finish our shape here. Then we can go ahead and run this. These beginning steps, they do buffer pretty quickly, which is nice. There'll be some later. We'll have one that's a 3-minute buffer time and one that's a 4-minute buffer time. So I'll warn you, and you guys can go get a drink or something if you need to. So, alrighty, we're moving on to our next one. Okay, create DEM. I would say that this is probably the most complicated of the project setup steps. Honestly, it's probably the most complicated out of all of the steps, just because it's so different from the old tool. So this first step is asking us to find our area of interest. So we can do the drop down, or you can also click and drag from over here. Either way works just fine. And in theory, okay, so we're doing local files. Now, in theory, I could take all 4 of my DEMs and bring them in here, and it should do a raster merge for me. However, every time I've practiced this is a glitch, and it will not finish this part. So I have already done a raster merge, and I know we've done it previously, so I will skip that step, and I'm just gonna add it here from my previous. So you will have to do the raster merge step before you get here, or say you get here and you realize, oh, I haven't done the step yet. You can divert from step 3, create DEM, and go do that raster merge, and then return back to the DEM. Unfortunately, it would be really nice if we didn't have to do that raster merge step. I'm hoping maybe later releases that will be fixed, and maybe I'll have some guinea pigs that run it and it's not an issue for them, and we'll maybe figure out what's going on. But as of now, we're doing the raster merge step ahead of time. So now here we are going to specify the output cell size in meters. All of OGRIP's DEMs are in feet, so we had to do a little bit of a conversion. I did that math for you. So you want to write down this number. It is 0.762. And you'll probably have that on a Post-it note stuck on your wall if you were me, something to remember. And then we are going to select the units for our DEM, which are US survey feet. And then these next 2, it says do not change. They are pulled in from our layers that we already made. And then down here, since they are not those two things are not matching. It's asking to do a conversion. So what it's doing is it's taking the NAD 1983 Harn and transforming it to the WGS 1984. You can leave this default as this, and it works. There's also options down here for 3 and without a number after. I have tried them and they all work. So for this case, we're just going to leave it default and go ahead and hit run. I am not truly sure why there are multiple versions of the same conversion. I don't know what the differences are in the background, but this is what works. We will have some buffer time throughout this, so great time to ask questions if you have any. Righty. Okay, so now we have, well, it's still thinking, just kidding. I got excited here. I thought it was done. Okay, there we are. We finally have our DEM here. Okay. And this is very similar to what was produced before. The next step is optional. So if you have a field survey, you are able to calibrate that, like match up the elevations based on your survey. I personally do not have a survey right now. Since I'm no longer a field technician, I didn't have a survey on hand to practice with. So this might be something I have some guinea pigs play with, and we might have some more information on how to play with that later. But in theory, you would just be able to pull in your DEM, select your point survey, and if you needed to add an adjustment. So since that's optional, we are just going to skip that and go to create hillshade, slope, and depth grid. Alrighty, and then we just go ahead and select our DEM that we just created. And then just I leave these selected. The depth grid I think is always very helpful when it comes to later steps. So we'll go ahead and run this one. This one does take some time, so bear with me. I see. Will you send this out to us for reference? Are you guys referring to like the recording? I assume. I believe this will be posted somewhere. All right. I'm hoping, okay, somebody asked, will there be a written guide as well? That is a goal for me to put together. I kind of have it started. It is not in existence yet, but that is a goal. Because we had the old Arc map version for a long time, and to be honest, I never really got around to doing the Arc Pro one, but the first Arc Pro one. But yes, that is a goal of mine to have a written guide, just to follow step by step, so you guys don't have to look through the the video every time you want to reference it. So yes, I will put that on my to-do list. Alrighty, so here are our results for our hillshade, slope, and depth grid. Alrighty, so, and then the next thing is create contours. Again, you're going to select your DEM. It's pretty repetitive here. And then your contour interval. So if you want it every 1 foot, I know some places are a lot flatter than this one. You know, you can even go down to 1/2 foot for contour lines. For this case, I'm just going to put 5. We'll do 5 foot intervals and go ahead and run it. Thank you, Adrian, for sharing that link. I believe, yeah, we do post those to our YouTube channel. Okay, so now we have contour lines. And then we're going to jump down to our watershed tool steps. So this is kind of where we jump back into very similar to the previous tool. So we'll do delineation, create stream networks. I will tell you guys, this is the long one. So you guys need to take a drink after I get this part set up. Go ahead and do that. So I selected my DEM, and then here's where I'm going to put in my culverts. Just so I can see better, I'm going to turn off all these layers so that I can kind of see the image below. And I could do the area of interest too here. I don't need that. Okay, so you can kind of see in here where water is stacking up. And because I'm very familiar with the area, I do know that there are bridges and or culverts in these areas. So I will just go ahead and hit our pencil, hit line. And what you're going to do is you're just kind of going to connect them. What this does is it tells the tool that, hey, there is not a dam here. There is some way through this obstacle. So that it can draw your stream network correctly. Otherwise, if you miss it, it's going to probably like come. So in this case, it would probably like come down here until it was like level enough to get across the road and then kind of snake back. So it would get a little bit weird. Some counties have layers that have their county or township culverts and bridges digitized as points. Those are really helpful if you have access to them. I highly recommend getting a hold of those if you have them. Stream threshold acres. So what this is talking about, it defaults to 5 acres. I bump it down to 1 because I like a little bit more detail. A lot of times some of our waterways are, they have smaller acres, especially in more hilly areas. And also I like more detail because it's me. So we'll go ahead and run this one. This one will take about 4 minutes. So if you guys need to go get a drink, stretch your legs, I understand. This one does, when I run it on my machine, the status bar kind of freezes up. It still completes, but in previous tools, you know, it kind of shows the line moving and it makes it look like it's not frozen. But a good test is just to move your screen around. But yeah, we're going to camp out here for a couple minutes.
Hey, Lindsay.
Yeah.
I know you guys don't like develop these tools or anything like that. But I guess I'm just curious if you have any insight as to why they broke that first step into like 6 different steps, as opposed to just having it all be one like before.
Right. Yeah. It's not ideal. At least for what we use it for
as
a
long
lot.
as it gets the job done, but yeah.
Right. I have some suspicions that it might be related to them using already made tools in ArcGIS versus making like one big super button, basically.
Gotcha.
But yeah, so I'm not exactly sure why they chose to do that. It may be the watershed tool is only one piece of the engineering tools. So it could have been more useful for some of the other steps, which I do not pretend to be a complete expert in those other tools. So yeah.
Okay. Yeah, fair enough. Thanks.
Yeah, yeah. I don't have a definite answer to that,
No, I
but
was just curious, that's all.
yeah. There are existing ArcHydro tools actually. It's an extension that you can add to, and I don't know if it's held back by any licensing bits. I've had it on mine for a while, but you can add our ArcHydro tools, and they're kind of the way they're formatted is more similar to how this tool is set up, where you have one step and then another, not just like we're doing the area of interest and it's making the DEM and everything all in one. So I'm kind of wondering if that's what it's referencing. Um, but yeah, I don't have an official answer to that.
That's okay.
Yeah, so we're checking, it's still not frozen. I always like to open up these the view details on the status bar down here. It's always just, especially when you're just hanging out. It's also helpful if it throws any errors. If you guys run into errors while you're working and you want to send it to me, having like a screenshot of whatever comes out in this box is very helpful to me. And if you have a more DMs or a bigger watershed that you're running, it's likely that this might take a little bit longer. But 4 minutes gives you a good idea. At least this every time I've ran the same watershed a couple of times. You can't tell, but every time I've ran this one and this whole DEM set, it takes about 4 minutes. So keep that in mind. If you're like panicking, oh, 4 minutes feels a lot longer on a webinar than if you're just hanging out in your office, but all right, I think it lives. All right, yep, a little over 4 minutes. Okay. All righty, so we'll move on to our next step here. Just create watershed. So in here, we're going to select those stream networks that we just made. And then we are going to digitize our outlet. And I'm going to come down here. And you have to cross a blue line in order for this to really work well. It'll get really weird if you don't have a blue line to cross. That's why I say having the lower acreage threshold when you're making the stream networks. Although, yes, it takes a little bit more time for it to draw all the lines. In some areas, it makes more sense to have more lines based on um, the landscape and how many acres are typically coming together in a waterway. So, alrighty, so I am going to give this a name and we're going to call it Waterway A. And then I'm going to click the create flow path. This is another glitch. I have not got this to successfully draw the flow path. This is kind of where I need some guinea pigs. I'm hoping that in previous release, or not previous, future releases, that this would be fixed, because it is really handy to have this determine the flow path length for you versus you going in and measuring it yourself. But it is what it is right now. And this one takes about 3 minutes, I believe, so. We can open up the details and check it out. And this one might take so long because of the flow path issue. Because it's currently sitting on the calculating watershed flow path right now. Right, so you can see there in the box that it threw an error. It tells you have to trace your stream network to create them manually. So, I will say that this tool actually has pretty good descriptions of things. So when something goes wrong, it kind of tells you, like, in plain language what's happening, which I think is an improvement. It's nice. Also, if you hover over beside the edge of where you need to enter in a layer or anything like that, it'll give you a description, like a pretty long description on, what it's looking for, what you need to do, which can be really helpful, especially on that create DEM step, because that one's different. That one's not one we're used to. Alrighty, so you see down here it has like the yellow error message, or caution message. And it tells you, yeah, you're gonna have to manually draw or measure your flow path, which is unfortunate, because I really like that feature in previous releases. So again, hopefully that will get fixed here in the future. So. And this is very similar to the previous tool. If you are very familiar with the area and hey, I know that this does not cross this road here, say there's some sort of diversion or something, and you edit this, you can edit the shape of this watershed and like remove this part. And then in order to update the attributes, which would be in recalculating the watershed area and like the average slope and all of that, you would just go in and select your watershed, and then run this tool. Since we are not editing it, we will skip it. And then the next part is preparing our soil and land use layers, just like the previous tool. And this was what I was referring to with descriptions. So if you hover over the side of these with the info, they kind of give you a pretty good description on most of these, which is nice. And even here in the bar, a lot of them, some of them are like, do not change, which is nice. So, alrighty. So here we are going to pick our watershed, or waterway A. And since I was old school, I did bring in the soils layer. And if I were to use that, I could drag it in over here and I'd pick my hydraulic group in my layer. And I don't have access to a clue layer or a parcels layer right now, so I'm not going to fill that in. But the difference in this tool is that we can also use the, if I can find it, there's a lot of things in here now, the embedded soils layer, which is, it's called, for those not on USDA network, most SWCDs. So you could select that one. And then in the drop-down box, you only have one option, which is kind of really nice. And then you can run this. Since this is new, I'll run it with that. The difference will be that when you ran it with the county soils layer, in the attribute table, when you look at it after it's run, it has each soil's name broke out, and then also its hydraulic unit. This will only have the hydraulic group labeling. Like, it's not going to give you the breakout by different name, which is honestly kind of nice. Especially if you had a lot of them that needed to be filled in, which you will see here in a second. So down here, this soil group has the option of having a grade of C or D. And so if I ran this with the county soils layer, it would look identical, except the C would be broke up in more lines just based on its soil name. So really, at the end of the day, you're getting to the same result. If you're curious here why it's got a caution, it is telling you that, hey, you need to fill in those multiple options or designate the land uses before you continue, which is nice. So again, lots of warnings that tell you what to do. So we have these here and we need to change them. So what I do is I right click and I open the attribute table. And here you'll see this designation, it's got C or D. In order to decide what you need to choose here, you're going to base that based on the area. So if this area has been drained with tile and you know that, you could pick C, which is meaning that there's going to be technically a little bit less runoff than if there were no tile. Since I know that there's no tile in this area, I'm going to put D, which means that there's going to be a little bit more runoff. And after I select that, I go up here under the Edit tab and I'm going to hit Save. Now I got to do the same thing for the land use. So we open up the attribute table. I don't have anything assigned here. And here, let me turn this off so we can see things. All right, you can see down here, there's a lot of options. So I'm just going to minimize that just so we can see what's going on. So if you know, so in here, there's a little bit of woods. Technically, there's a different field here. We've got some residential lawn or open space up here and a road. So we could divide this up. We should divide this up to get an accurate representation. So what I would do is I would use the split tool, which is under this edit tab up here, split tool. And of course it's saying, oh, you have nothing to divide. So we're going to go to our land use. We're going to click it, right click, selection, select all. And now we have something and we could say split. So I'm not going to divide these fields just for time, but I will divide out a little chunk for the woods just for fun. The important part with using the split tool is to make sure that you cross or snap to this border. Otherwise it won't complete the split. There and there. Okay. So that'll be good. And then we're going to hit save. Okay, clear. So in order to tell which chunk goes to what part, we can select here on the attribute table. I just clicked on this little one here. And we can see that, okay, it's all of this field. And what I did is I did pull this farther out. I do recommend that, otherwise gets a little jumpy and doesn't want to keep this drop down open for some reason. Just a disclaimer. Okay, so we're going to pick row crops and we're going to say that it's straight row with residue and in good condition. The next one here is going to be the wooded area. So, and if you guys explore this, you will notice it's a little bit different than some previous releases. And if you get far enough down, you will see, actually, here, I'll just show you. We've got Puerto Rico, Hawaii, and Florida designated areas specifically. So, yeah, there's just a little bit. These are pretty similar, but there are more and different options. So if you're very used to it, just take a minute and read through them. So for this, we're going to do woods. It's protected from grazing and it's got litter, brush, and adequate soil cover. I need to figure out which one this one is. Okay, this one's the open space. So double click it. We'll look for open space. So that goes for lawns, parks, golf courses, etc. And I'm going to say that, yes, it has more than 75% grass cover. And then this last one is for the road. So it's called Streets and Roads. It's not dirt or gravel, it's paved, and it has open ditches on the side. So, okay. You do have to like click off of, when the box is still green around here, you do have to click off of it. Okay. So we have them all designated now, and we can hit save up here on our edit tab. Okay, now we're going to navigate back to the tool, which is under the catalog. I know I have a lot of tabs open down here, but this is the catalog pane. And our next step is the runoff curve number. And here we will select our watershed and hit run. And it should go. So this one runs a little bit quicker than the last couple. Okay, and we made it. So here I can turn off this and I'll turn off my land use so that you can kind of see. I'll open up my attribute table for this, and this is where you got your good information for the waterway sizing wizard, if that's your goal. So you would be able to use the information here, this designation here, and then how many acres are assigned to that runoff curve number. Yeah, and you can use that in your waterway size wizard and get your cubic feet per second and other good information. Again, you do have to still measure out your flow path length. Otherwise, if it was working correctly, which it shows it up here, you would be able to open up the attribute table for it, and there would be a row in here that gave you a length. But since mine failed, it's blank. Again, hopefully that will be corrected in the future. But yeah, so you got a couple options here. You can go ahead and make a map out of it, or you just pull the data from the attribute table. But yeah, so here's something I was doing earlier was opening up the symbology for the runoff curve number, and you can do unique values based on, here you would change it to your runoff curve number. Of course, it's going to look like an Easter egg because that is the default apparently for Esri. But or you can do graduated colors. This kind of gives you more of a ramp It does give you a range, but it does hit, there's only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, so it broke it out into the 5 groups anyway. And let's look at one that looks better. Here. So you can see the darker red colors are higher runoff than, say, the woods. So anyway, you could print this off and put it in your design folder. You can also go in here and label, which it defaulted to label to the runoff curve number, which was nice. But if it didn't, you would go in here and clear this out and double click RCN and then hit apply. And then it would, yeah. So I know that was a lot. Luckily, the end portion is very similar to the previous tools. It's just that project setup. That's the big difference. And really that DEM step and remembering, you know, what number goes in here. And of course, it's got a glitch too with not wanting to merge the merge multiple DEMs. If you do try to use it and you have multiple DEMs hoping that it will combine them, it will just throw an error in there and it will say in there that the mosaic to new raster step failed. So if you open up those notes based on the status bar, it'll say the view details. If you open that up, it does tell you that the mosaic to new raster failed. So yeah, does anybody have questions? Okay, so Josh is asking if I added my individual what are you meaning? You can unmute yourself if you if you want. So you're saying if I put like these individual like the downloaded DEMs into the tool. I don't know if Josh can unmute himself. Yes. Okay. Maybe. I have not tried it that way. You can be my guinea pig. So I believe he's asking if we used a mosaic data set instead of individuals, which is what I did for the I call it a raster merge, but it is mosaic to new raster. I skipped that step today just because I'd gone over it in previous. I can show you guys where that's at. Give me 1 second to think. So I want geoprocessing and I can do to new raster. Okay. This is the tool I use to make my quote unquote raster merge. It's mosaic to new raster. And that's what I threw into the data set to get it to bypass. Which is what we used to do previously for the tool, because it didn't even pretend to do it before. Unfortunately, this one got me really excited. And I was like, we're not going to have to do that step anymore. Because it's like the one you start using the tool and you forgot to do the merge, and then you have to go back and make the merge and bring it in. But yeah, so I'm really hopeful that in later releases, that little hiccup will be fixed. Does anybody else have questions? Okay. So is EFH no longer being supported, or is it just an aside? I am not 100% sure. Does anybody else have info on that? Who's on here? Adrian, do you happen to know?
I think someone already hit it in the
Oh.
comments. This is just the input data that you'll need for
Oh,
EFH.
yes.
So yes, you will still use it.
Okay, sorry. I think I misread that. Yes, it will still exist. Cool. Well, I will be sharing this tool, or I will give it also to Amy and whoever needs it, and we can distribute it to whoever would like it. Yeah, if you guys run into questions too, or hiccups with it, just let me know. Again, the more people who use it, the more we'll learn about it and find its little glitches and bugs that we'll work through. But honestly, I think this will be really good going forward. Once we get a hang of that beginning part. But yeah, feel free to ask me any questions if you guys think of something later. But I think we will call it here. All right, thank you guys.